Hi, I'm Joe. In this video, we will talk about some interesting features of the ongoing 11th Global Assembly of the World Movement for Democracy. The assembly is holding in Taipei on October 25th, the same day of Taiwan's retrocession day. Ing-wen, the Taiwan's leader, and Yu Ing-wen, the head of legislature, attend the assembly and give speeches. The pedigree of this assembly is pretty hardcore. It was co-organized by the U.S. National Endowment for Democracy and the Taiwan Democracy Foundation. In theory, it runs parallel with Summit for Democracy, in which U.S. officials are actively involved. In a sense, representatives who came to this meeting seems like to shake hands with the U.S. president indirectly. The WMD Assembly has been going on for more than 20 years since 1999, and its main purpose is to help NAD promote democracy in Asia, African, and Latin nations. It has been 11th Assembly since the first one in New Delhi, and it is the longest running and the most influential gathering of global rebels in various of such kind of meetings after the end of Cold War. Because the COVID-19 epidemic, last assembly was held online, therefore this year the assembly is much larger. From this context, the main purpose is to teach them how to overturn third world governments. But this meeting is more politically correct. It emphasizes on avoiding violence in their typical propaganda cases. Besides the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, there's nothing new to talk about this year. But after the last online meeting, such an offline meeting can be held in Taiwan is worth talking. After all, there is no point to having a movement meeting if you can't see each other lively. Due to the COVID-19 epidemic and the increase in vigilance to the color revolution of the current ruling blocs in many countries, the momentum of the assembly has declined slightly in recent years. Especially in 2020, due to the epidemic, the meeting was almost when it was temporarily changed online. Tensions between China and the US has been rising recently. So NAD hopes the 2022 conference will make a bigger noise. NAD is an old friend of Chinese media, but there is few people have introduced NAD's organizational structure to audience. The only prominent organizational secretariat of this NAD is an office in Washington. If we want to figure out NAD's operational logic, we need to analyze the steering committee list. The members of the steering committee usually comes from the developed countries in Europe and the United States, which are basically professors or members working in research institutions. These people are playing a role in every tower. While the members from Asia, Africa, and Latin countries are mostly opposition political groups. It can be said that NAD's organizational logic is that European and US think tanks act as general staff, while the Third World Action Groups are responsible for the implementation. The organizational team basically has no close relationships with the government or official institutions. But the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy, which is hosting the assembly, is something alternative within NAD. The Taiwan Foundation for Democracy looks like a non-government organization from its name, and seems to be similar to the Straits Exchange Foundation. But by its very nature, it is so-called a quango under the Taiwan system and an undisputed official organization. The TFD was originally set up by Chen Shui-bian to implement the slogan Transitional Justice after he came to power. It has been chaired by the head of legislature, formerly Wang Jinping, now Yu Ing-wen. But its real leadership has been controlled by Taiwan's Department of Foreign Affairs. The specific management of this foundation is the role of CEO. Candidates are members from the middle-level bureaucrats of Taiwan's Department of Foreign Affairs system. There are at least two reasons why NAD chose the TFD to be the co-organizer for this assembly. Firstly, NAD praised Taiwan's independent force for cooperating with the United States anti-China strategy. In addition, NAD was also looking for a reliable agency providing funds. When official organizations in Europe and the US cannot easily stand on stage, Taiwan's Department of Foreign Affairs grants are used to provide funds and a safe place for these activists, which are naturally far from governments. Therefore, the biggest feature of this assembly is not those movement participants, but by an official body has come to power to direct those rebel meetings. In addition to Native American leaders, the participants are mainly non-mainstream politicians from Asia, Africa, Latin American, and Eastern European countries. Many members of the NAT's executive committee are listed as Asia, Africa, or Latin nationality, but their college degrees and honors are awarded almost all by the United States and European countries. With the exceptions of a few people who still hold public office or members of parliament in their home countries, almost all of those politicians have left their hometown and engaged in democratic activities in diplomatic institutions and universities in the US and Europe. If things continue going like this way, they will gradually lose influence over their own country's politics, and their political status in Europe and the United States will also gradually decline. So they are more eager to make movements in their own countries. Those exiles control movements far away from their own societies. They often setting goals that are detached from the reality of their own countries, but more informed to the needs of political theory and propaganda in Europe and the US. Therefore, whatever the starting point of the action is, it will eventually turn into a destructive propaganda campaign, with almost zero constructive plans that are feasible for their own society. This year, Afghan's award winner, Aziz Ahmad Malikzada, was awarded a scholarship when he was studying in the United States. After graduating, he directly became the head of anti-corruption office of the former Afghanistan's first vice president. When the Taliban came to power, he immediately went to the US, working as a researcher at the University of South California. Currently, his study operation was to retweet videos of Afghan women take off their burqa in protest, but he did not give much thought about how to provide economic independent basis for women in Afghanistan. The steering committee also included Czech, who was Václav Havel's apprentice. He was a student leader at the Velvet Revolution in 1989, but with Václav Havel stepped down from office, he was kicked out from European Council on Foreign Relations and acting as an innocent citizen ever since. Another similar person is a Ukrainian lady who was an active participant in the 2004 Ukrainian Color Revolution and served as spokesperson for Yulia Tymoshenko. After Yulia Tymoshenko stepped down, she took part in the 2014 Euromaidan movement, a very typical fringe active character. The value of these people is not to build up a workable system and governorship, but rather making troubles to the current ruling forces in some extent. Therefore, after the success of so-called revolutionary actions, they were quickly abandoned by the new people in power and became the eternal fringe characters in a new status. Only in Taiwan they could be taken seriously by the establishment. When the goal of the movement becomes propaganda to the Europe and the United States, the method of movement also changed from streets to the internet. Most of today's democratic activists are in fact self-media teams. The last assembly was held online. Currently, one of the regular activities of the assembly is training web technologies, such as providing web toolkits to help members set up private web forums and instant messaging tools. There are also many tutorials on money laundering and ways for hidden assets. As the influence of short video apps and websites rises recently, the new round of training's key is to cut the past long videos into the short videos, which makes more incitement power. The homepage of Assembly has a movement display area, the largest of which is a matrix of members' tweets retweeting from one account to another. From this point of view, a high-profile assembly of movement has essentially become an intermediary for those self-medias. From this perspective, it is no longer just an alternative for Taiwan's official agencies to participate in a self-media assembly with the identity of the Republic of China, and to have Ing-wen give a speech. It can be considered that Taiwan's leader lowered themselves to talk with a group of self-media bloggers who have almost never had a chance to take in power. From any point of view, it is difficult for these self-media bloggers to provide substantial help to DPP government. To explain the Taiwanese officials' choice, we must look for reasons in light of Taiwan's political development history in recent decades. In the eyes of the DPP veterans, these actionists who participated in the conference are very similar to themselves 30 years ago, and the only difference is they now have internet tools. Back then, when the DPP started to get influence, it relied on private media such as Formosa magazine to organize street demonstrations, and finally established a stable ruling team with not bad results. It can be said that the DPP is the future of these actionists are most looking forward to, and these actionists are the past of DPP in a case. The initial form of DPP was an outside party movement. In the process of growing into the ruling party, it has incorporated many small figures and small organizations, which are similar to the current actionists. When current DPP looks at those actionists who came to Taiwan to take subsidies, we should also have thought of its own united front strategy. But the DPP didn't invite these actionists just for nostalgia. Furthermore, DPP spent money to hold assembly does not only coordinate in line with the US global democracy strategy. For the DPP, the core purpose of this movement assembly is to get support for the ruling within the island and prevent the more radical actionists like New Power Party from splitting their votes. The DPP came to power for the first time in 2000. After training in the several sessions of the real governorship, the DPP has now completely shattered the inertia of street actionists and transformed it into a bureaucratic party concentrated on elections. After the transformation, the DPP has improved its management ability to coordinate the interests of different social groups. But the cost is weakening its ideology and declining its internal cohesion. Normal people still hope to have a more direct ideological spokesperson or a clearer spokesperson for their interest. Therefore, some urban light-green people voted for the more elite Taiwan People's Party, while political organizations that are better at promoting Taiwan independence ideology are organizing street movements robbed dark green votes, such as the New Power Party. In order to monopolize the right to interpret the ideology of Taiwan independence while in power, and to avoid another sunflower student movement, the DPP must find a way to keep the memory of running private media and organizing street protests. The current leader of the DPP government just lacks of struggle hero in DPP's history. Ing-wen came from a business family and entered government as a green. She was neither from grassroots nor from the streets, and lacked the green color in history. In order to participate in the legislative election, Ing-wen joined the DPP party in 2004. Now, she is also psychologically weak in the face of other party founders, not to mention dealing with the more actionist forces such as New Power Party. Therefore, both the DPP and Ing-wen herself need to prove that they still have the power to mobilize the people, and they still have the determination to mobilize the people. Now, Nat has taken the initiative to come to the door and provide a group of priests from aboard who looks very popular. The Taiwan DPP authorities are certainly not short of money, and they are happy to invite those political fringe characters to come to the island to express Taiwan people that DPP has not forgotten their original intention. It is always been easy to destroy and difficult to build. But when criticizing the current system, the oppositions have often shown a sense of vitality and morality that suppress the ruling authorities. The current problem of the DPP is that it is trying to strengthen with both hands, not only to maintain the status of Taiwan's ruling party, but also to maintain the sentiment of street movement which they had over decades. In order to achieve this target, the DPP must curry favor with the United States externally, and it also must maintain the ideological commanding heights internally. That is why the DPP is happy to be the leader of the international beggar gangs and pay all bills. If you like this video, please subscribe our channel. Thank you very much.